I'm Pushkala Gopal, and I've been in Britain actively from the early 80s, 1983, when I came out on a British Council fellowship. And it was intended to be a 10-month trip. But after that, every year I started getting one project after the other, and by the time I was into the 90s, I found myself living here more of the year. Now I've made a conscious decision that I should try and go back and spend equal time in India, because there are developments that can affect both countries, even in the arts, if people are able to work together, and that's a very exciting point of time in history. I was taken away from here, although I was born here, when I was a baby. And my father was in the Indian Army. So for the first few years of my life, I was left in Chennai under the care of my aunt. She brought me up from the time I was 3 till the time I was 8. And at that time, I was exposed to lots of performances, because my aunt was a storytelling exponent herself. And I just began to spend several hours with the art form every day, but I wasn't necessarily learning dance at that time. I then moved to Hyderabad, where I started to learn dance. But Bharatanatyam, the purest of the styles, were believed to be found in South India, particularly in Chennai, which is the Mecca of Bharatanatyam. We were in Hyderabad, and we tried to find some teachers who would teach me dance. But it then turned out that the best option was to learn from a teacher in Chennai who had been to Kalakshetra when she was younger. And because it was not perceived in those days that Kalakshetra was accessible to part-time students, we decided that this was the next best option, or rather my parents decided. And I started my Arangetram training with this teacher called Malati Srinivasan, lovely lady. And she taught me my first margam and took me through the paces for the Arangetram. But we used to live in North India, and whenever I had performance opportunities, she couldn't really come out to conduct for me unless she carried her whole family with her. This was the stipulation of those times by her husband. And therefore we sort of felt we had to manage with local resources, and I went to another teacher of the same type of style, who was Guru Dakshinamurthy in Delhi. And then I was lucky enough to get a Government of India scholarship to go and do my advanced training with the Dhananjayans, who had been at the Kalakshetra for 15, 17 years. So he made me mold my style all the way from the beginning by starting with the first step again. So that was 2 years of very, very rigorous coaching. I would usually have a 2-hour one-to-one class with Dhananjayan, and then a 2-hour one-to-one class with his wife Shanta. And then in the evenings, I would join their other general classes or work in their productions. So 2 years went by when I sort of started there and went up there in terms of what I learned. In terms of where one is with the art form, of course, new things crop up all the time. One's always learning. So when I came to the UK, it was with the intention of being here for 10 months, doing my fellowship with the British Council and then going back. But so many work possibilities opened up, and organizations like the Academy were able to give me work, helping to launch productions, and all of that happened. In 1985-86, by then I had my own company with dancer Unni Krishnan, and we became quite busy touring different parts of England. No, in fact, England, Scotland. We toured nationally. And then in 89-90, we worked on a few new productions, working with theatre director Hilary Westlake, composer L. Subramaniam, some of those which helped us create some dance dramas in a genre that fused traditional Bharatanatyam with other musical forms or dance forms or theatrical forms. But what needed to happen all the time was teaching which was happening in parallel. So our lives as performing artists were only part of our professional lives. We did a lot of teaching and also through schools, workshops and things like that. But the student body, those who started with me in the early 80s, some of them were up ready for their Arangetrams from the 90s. So from between 1990 and now, I have had more or less 50 children doing their graduation. A few of them would have been with their siblings, so we've had a couple of trios. Until a couple of years ago, a lot of my Arangetrams were done jointly with Sadanam Unnikrishnan. And more recently, in the last couple of years, I've started to do a few Arangetrams by myself. Some of the students, the last three Arangetrams that I did, I think last year and the year before, were in Chennai. With Uni, we did one Arangetram in Sri Lanka, and most of the other Arangetrams have been done in the UK. A couple of my students who are coming up for 2013 are talking about doing 2 Arangetrams in India and a joint Arangetram here in the UK. Now you can't call a second performance an Arangetram because Arangetram actually means Aranga is the stage and Atram is ascending the stage. So it's believed that at the Arangetram is the opportunity for the dance incumbent to wear their bells, get the bells blessed by the teacher and by other elders as they perceive them in the community. They could be other dance teachers or grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents. But you then present an entire repertoire to an audience, doing all the pieces by yourself. Here, of course, because there is a lot of exposure, children get the opportunity to do 1 or 2 pieces in shared performances for quite a few years. And the annual student showcase also has become a part of the professional student life in Britain. So students here, the Arangetram is not the first time they're coming up on stage. But what the training for the Arangetram does is it makes them go through the rigor that demands stamina, both in terms of your memory, in terms of your physical being. And with most Arangetram students, as a teacher who's put them through this, I actually see their artistic development, the way it takes place in the last few weeks or months leading up to the Arangetram. So even though they've known the pieces of repertoire sometimes for a year, sometimes for a year or 2, very often I create something in the last week or the last month, because the grasp of the student and their ability to learn just the structure of a piece and to fill it in themselves is much better having gone through the period of directed, rigorous, repetitive training. The intuitive skills really come into play, and when you see the musicians in rehearsal for the first time, or the pupils, some of them, they just they seem to take on a different personality the first time that happens. Others go through a crisis, they don't know how to deal with it, they don't know how, and it takes them a few rehearsals to respond to the different sounds they're hearing and to learn where to take their new cues from, because the teacher is no longer in front of them frowning or lifting eyebrows or lifting, saying taka dimi, taka janu, and slowly lifting your hand as it goes up to show the student, and then you do this, tuck yourself in, lift your head while you're teaching. The teacher is taken away and put this on the side when you do a traditional Bharatanatyam margam. And so for the student to really come into their own and take this on and face the audience and deliver the performance, it's something that those who've done it always say that they miss the rehearsal period that preceded the Arangetram. That's one of the things that they're sad about. Although they have a video to look at, but then all of them, their critical faculties have also really developed in the few weeks leading to the Arangetram. So this is a unique training event, and because of the structure of the nature of the hours needed for the training of the Arangetram, very often if we are planning autumn Arangetrams in Britain, the training starts at 5:30 in the morning. And I haven't actually actively recommended this to pupils, but I find increasingly that a lot of my pupils prefer to become vegetarian over the Arangetram period and have smaller meals more frequently. So they actually start having a Vedic kind of life, lots of stretches, calm time, thinking time, active practice, and just being within the ambience and the thought processes that go with the delivering of the repertoire. And more recently, pupils have actually started to come and stay with me. They actually live like they are like it would have been Gurukula, not with all those rules and the kind of regimentation that goes with doing the Guru's housework for them. Not in that sense, but just spending talking time, thinking time, looking at rehearsals. So for a few days, this is all one does. So it's a sharing of a major life experience before a milestone. Having said that, it's only after the Arangetram that the pupil starts to be aware of all the things involved. So it is a starting point, even though it is the ending point of that kind of rigorous training. But it's the starting point of processes which pupils are then able to put into themselves or go to other Arangetram students and work with each other. Because a teacher has a limited amount of time. Arangetrams are expensive, so parents are just able to say, yes, we'll do it until this year, and once it's done, the responsibility of finding more money for training, or indeed, as today's Arangetram, she lives in New Malden, and there have been weeks when one trip, her mother has dropped her in the morning and gone off, and in the evening her uncle has collected her because the same person couldn't do the 2 trips. But nevertheless, she's under 18, she couldn't drive herself. That's happened. Next year, I have a pupil who would have been ready for an Arangetram 4 or 5 years ago, but because of the nature of the family's financial commitments, she decided that she would start earning, save up, and do her own Arangetram. And I had done one such this February also. The costumes, they like to have 3 or 4 new costumes. They like to produce a complete brochure describing all the pieces. The musicians are paid for rehearsal, paid to perform. So a simple Arangetram can cost between 5,000 and 6,000 pounds, and an expensive Arangetram can cost 15, even 20,000 pounds, because sometimes parents like to fly in artists of world fame, like Vajayantimala, the film actress, or Padmini, the film actress. I think the most the VIP that we had at one of our pupils' Arangetrams was that they flew out, my gurus, Shanta and Dhananjayan, just to be the chief guest for the event. And for a lot of people, because these days parents feel that they don't know when their children marry, whether they will get the chance to do a traditional event for the child or not, because the partner may well be from a different world culture. So they're very happy, while they still have the opportunity to do something traditional for their children, that they give them an Arangetram, like you give somebody a wedding or give them a sports car. So that's good for us dance teachers, because in terms of keeping up the traditional work, when there's so much pressure outside to just keep doing new things, the importance of the traditional art form's growth really sustains the dance teacher in terms of their relationship with their peers, their teachers back home in India, but now if you come to East Ham or Wembley or Tooting, you can find that you can buy traditional bells, you can buy costumes. Of course, they're sort of made for the masses, so you find them hanging on hangers, and so they're not as aesthetic or as well fitted as the ones you commission yourself. But a few of the dance tailors in South India, they all have excellent websites, and you can requisition things that they courier out to you. So the whole awareness of the market and I once saw a dance costume advertised on eBay. So I think the world has become a smaller place, and it's a different experience doing an Arangetram today.